The Senate passed what they're calling the Inflation Reduction Act. Of course, all the analysis and reports done on this show that will have no impact on inflation, might even have a bad impact on inflation because, of course, this is more government spending to the tune of doubling the size of the IRS.
The problem here is you've got an agency that is basically incompetent, and now you're giving them more money to be more incompetent. So this is just throwing more money at this doesn't fix this problem.
The Democrats are making the IRS bigger than the Pentagon, plus the Department of State, plus the FBI, plus the Border Patrol combined.
Getting a more than double staff increase. So it's going from 78,000, adding another additional 87,000 to that list. I mean, it will be size like the U.S. military.
The Border Patrol, from a policy perspective right now, needs the assistance. They need more agents on the border. They get pittance. And that shows you the priorities of an administration. Spending shows priorities.
It's an interesting year to run on, to say we're going to pay for this legislation that you're going to love so much by auditing more middle-class Americans who can't rely on big law firms and accounting firms to do their taxes and shouldn't have to. It shouldn't be a process that's that difficult for them. Small business owners, again, that fall under this is always that $400,000 a year or more number they throw out is bogus. You start cutting it through that, you start realizing a couple $100,000 a year. It includes small business owners as well.
So it's as if the American people are spending more of their money to get IRS agents that are not properly trained and an agency that you still have to fax information to audit middle-class Americans. That's what this bill really does.
Joint Committee on Taxation, that's bipartisan. It's Congress's official tax scorekeeper, says that 78, that's the baseline, to 90% of the new money raised from increasing the size of the IRS and more audits will be from underreported income from people making less than $200,000 a year.
So this is
that is right at the middle class, right at the small business owner.
The claim is that they hire these agents and they'll more than pay for themselves. I saw somewhere somebody figures it'll cost $250,000 for every additional IRS agent. The chance of them generating more than $250,000 is zero. So this will be a net cost, not a net gain. But Jay, you've been so much at the center working on these issues at the IRS. Don't think that this won't even make it more politicized. Everybody remembers the famous lowest learner. Yep. The risk that the IRS, now almost double in size, will continue to not only be incompetent but political increases dramatically. And it wouldn't shock you to know that I'll bet the Democrats know that too.
The Wharton School of Business evaluated the Inflation Reduction Act and said it actually has zero impact on inflation. In fact, inflation may rise under this act. So I think the part of the problem here, and I think we have to be clear on this, is that they put these titles and names to these bills to make it sound palatable. But at the end of the day, it's not only not palatable, it's dangerous what they're proposing because it doesn't have a coherent economic base.
Even the CBO doesn't think it's going to do a darn thing to lower inflation. I can't imagine that government spending would, for the first time in history, ever actually lower inflation. Instead of doing the things that would actually impact your life, this is the disconnect that the Biden administration is trying to foist on the American people as they celebrate this victory. It's going to drive cost to the average consumer, and I think people will be able to see right through this.
Likely to pass in the United States Congress, it looks like at this point.
Yes, I mean, again, it would be Democrats that have to defeat this. There's not enough Republican votes to do that, obviously, in the House right now. So you've got to say, will it be the squad who think this is not enough Green New Deal? But it is. I mean, this is the first, again, largest spending on during a time when people are calling a recession. Inflation is high, very high. They are spending more on climate than they've ever spent in the history of the federal government.